Hey guys, this is the V Man from No Budget Productions, and with me today is my good friend Craig. How are we doing, my friend?
Fine, thank you very much. It's finally good to get a chance to talk to you kind of in person. Yeah, we've done a lot of, messaging and emailing and so on and so forth back and forth over the years, but I think this is the first time we've been face to face, as it
Yeah,
were. So I, I
yeah.
I'm glad for the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, trust me, the pleasure is purely on this side because you're one of those people that when I first started doing fan film stuff, you were so encouraging, and your knowledge of starships and stuff, like you have such a knowledge of that stuff, and you're one of those people that you can hang around and just soak up the knowledge like a sponge. Like you're so smart on all this stuff. So we've talked a few times on the phone, and I tell you, the first time I spoke with you, it was like, I knew you for years. So it's a pleasure to have you on, and I plan to stop doing the Pizza Roll Diaries in January, um, but you were one of the people that I really wanted to get on and discuss, because of your knowledge on not only CGI but fan films in general, and your approach to these type of things. Um, but like, going back to uh, before we delve into your work on Starship Valiant and Outer Rim, um, you have been a Star Trek fan for how long would you say? What got you into Star Trek and CGI?
I've been a Star Trek fan since I was like 5 years old. So that'll be that'll be 50 years next year. It was a show that I caught on television when I was a kid, and of course, at that age, it's the whole, you know, whiz bang starships fighting, Captain Kirk getting into fisticuffs every episode, and it was exciting. That's why I enjoyed it. It was an exciting television show. I watched all of those shows. That was when the show first entered syndication after being canceled. You know, um, so I watched all of those shows. I watched that show. I watched Batman. So I was, just infused with that late '60s television. Very early in my life. But Star Trek just, appealed to me because I'd always, even at that young age, I enjoyed science fiction. My father got me into watching science fiction movies, right around that same age. So having a television series that was science fiction based, was a natural for me. But at the time when you're a young kid, all you see is the action. But the show stuck with me as I grew up. I became, uh, you know, I call myself a Star Trek fan. I don't like the term Trekkie or Trekker. There's a lot of divisiveness in the community about that stuff. So I'm just like, I'm a Star Trek fan. I like Star Trek. But it stuck with me as I grew up, and of course, as I kept getting older, I saw the messages in those episodes, and that took the show to an entirely new level for me. It's like, oh, this isn't just you know a flashy TV series. They're saying something here. They're trying to say something about us. And so I actually started learning, you know, the show was teaching me things. And that's why it has stayed with me for so very long, is because, you know, the, it, the show was really about things. It wasn't just an hour long show that you could just empty your brain and watch without paying attention to it at all. There were things there that you had to notice, and I really appreciated that as I got older. So it stayed with me, and it still is. So yeah, I'm still a big Star Trek fan.
Well, the one thing about Star Trek that it's not afraid to do is change with the times. People, especially now, some of the some of us older fans who aren't fans of the new stuff, who they say, well, Star Trek, this isn't Star Trek. Star Trek, it wouldn't change. This is changing Star Trek. It's like Star Trek has constantly evolved. If you go back to like the 1960s, and then look at like the motion picture, that was drastically different from like the TV show. And then you look at like Star Trek 2, that was again different from the motion picture. And then you look
Right.
at Next Gen, that was a complete contrast to the original series. DS9 was different from Next Gen. Like again, so many variations of Trek. But it all, like each version of Trek had a message to it. And if for that one person that it touched, it touched intimately.
Right.
And even the animated series, which I was watching last night as I was taking my OJ and my Mucinex. I sat there and Royce fell asleep to watching Star Trek the animated series with me. And even as I was watching those, I was like, there's still kind of that hint of a message that a lot of cartoons from back then didn't have. But television from back then, from like Lost in Space or Batman, a lot of that stuff from back then is just different from some of the television we have now, just in terms of what they were trying to bring from the moral plays.
Right.
It's drastically different, because we didn't have those. It was just a different time because we were coming out of World War II and whatnot, and we were trying to they were trying to build that audience of morality per se. So Star Trek came at a very interesting time.
Oh yeah, it did. I mean, and it was really saying, of course, it said a lot about the time in which it was produced, of course, but so much of that can be carried over to today. Some things haven't changed all that much. So there are a lot of messages within those episodes that are still very pertinent today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's why I think the original series is very is so important. I mean, not only is it the launch point for this entire franchise that's grown, but it kind of it set a standard. You had mentioned like Lost in Space and Batman, that were on at the same time, and if you look at those shows, there's a big difference between them and Star Trek. Batman, was a great deal of fun, but they really weren't trying to say anything. It
Right.
was just supposed to be entertainment.
Right.
And Lost in Space very quickly became like a children's show
Right.
in a way. It started out being quite adult. I remember the pilot. The pilot's fantastic, and it's very adult oriented. But as the show went on, it very quickly became like a children's show. But Star Trek never did that.
Right. It's pretty consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, it did not. It did not bow to that. It kept its standards very high in terms of the stories that it wanted to tell, and I think that's probably the reason why it really stuck with me, is that I could watch it at 5 and see it as this great science fiction this great science fiction show, but then see it at 20 and start seeing the messages and saying, wait a minute, this show's still talking to me.
Right.
Batman's not talking to me anymore. Lost in Space isn't talking to me anymore. I've outgrown them, and I didn't outgrow Star Trek.
Well, I think with Lost in Space, I think like maybe that first season was probably the most adult oriented, because Dr. Smith was he got downright creepy in some of those episodes. Or when I say creepy, creepy for 60s television,
Yeah.
But you go to those latter ones, and he's not, he's he's the stereotypical, whoa,
Yes.
and, it's not the same caricature. It's more of a caricature.
Yes.
Star Trek really didn't do that. It got kind of up there in the third season of TOS. Spock's brain comes to mind.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you know what? Every series has to have at least one real stinker. you know. And I'm convinced that show is actually written as a joke, and they never the writer, I don't remember the writer offhand, but he was like, they'll never do this, but they were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And he was like, what?
Let's go there.
Yeah. So
Let's see. I'd love to see that like redone, modern time. Like let's do that with Data now. Let's just keep retelling the stories.
I'm actually convinced that there is a way to tell that story well.
Mhm.
But it would take it would take massive rewriting, and still a certain suspension of disbelief, but
Right.
I think it could be done in a far less hokey way than it ended up being done. So, but
Well,
like I said, every show's got a couple of bad apples in their bag. So,
well, I mean, go back to Next Generation. Most of that first season is,
oh yeah,
it's, oh, but yeah, it's very cringeworthy, So and I hate that word cringe, but I mean, it's,
yes,
what is it? Code of Honor, I think, is that first episode. It's like, really, we're
yeah,
going here, like, and ironically enough, the aliens for that film was supposed to be reptilians. But then they're like, well, we don't have the budget for this, so let's not even go there. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, otherwise you come off as extremely racist. Like, what is
yes,
what is this?
yeah,
It's just yeah, that first season of Next Gen, it had a lot of good ideas, like Geordi, the blind guy flying the
blind,
spaceship,
yes,
Klingon on the bridge of the starship, so they had, showing we're at peace, an android, they had a lot of good ideas, but damn, that execution, So I agree with you. I think Spock's brain could be done. Just let's kind of cut away some of the BS here, and let's do a couple of rewrites. A
yeah,
script polish.
yeah.
I agree with you.
Well, yeah, and I think in the first season, especially the first season of Next Generation, Roddenberry had gathered a number of people who worked with him on the original series,
Yeah,
and they were still trying to produce a show the way they had in the '60s.
yeah.
But this is 20 years later,
It doesn't
and
work like that. Yeah,
it does not work like that at all. It really doesn't. And I think
yeah,
that's where, kind of like the first two seasons, when they faltered, that's why they faltered. There were some good episodes in that first season. The one with the Binars is a
yes, yes,
spectacular episode.
yeah.
And I remember, watching these shows, when they first aired, because Star Trek coming back was so big to me and my friends.
Yeah.
We were so excited, and we thought. I remember we watched it every week, and every week we were just so excited. At the end, we're like, "What's on?" That was a phrase that we all started saying was, "What's on next week?" Because we were so, it's like we were so
Right,
excited. We thought what we were watching was great,
right,
and only in retrospect did we go, "Oh God, that episode was terrible."
right,
It
right,
was really bad.
right.
Um, but at the time it was new Star Trek, and that was what was exciting to us. But I think, around the third season, they really found, their sea legs, as it
Oh
were,
yeah,
and started making television that turned out to be some of the best TV that was on at the time. But every show needs to shake down a little bit, and the first two seasons are definitely a shakedown cruise for the next generation, because
oh yeah,
there were some real clunkers in there.
oh
That just
yeah. I mean, they took the script of The Child, which was supposed to be for Star Trek Phase Two,
yeah,
and they just dusted it off and said, "Let's change the names and let's make it Troy." And it's like that. That to me, that's one of the episodes I drop. I hate. And I don't like using the word hate, but I really
yeah,
do hate that episode, because to me that doesn't feel like a next gen, and I never understood that until I heard that was a repolish of an old script, and I was like,
yeah,
see, how it makes sense.
yeah,
Um, and to me, I'm not above using the scripts for something else if it applies, but to me, it's such a discredit to the next generation crew, and I'm not the biggest Troy fan, please don't crucify me, Marina Sirtis fans,
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, I didn't like Pulaski. I'm not a Marina Sirtis fan. So you're giving me two things in this episode where I'm like, does not work,
Yeah.
and but it did give us, the first two seasons of Next Gen. We got episodes like Q, with the Borg. We got episodes like Peak Performance, where they're actually having battle simulations. They gave
Right.
us episodes like Data Lore, which I think is a really good episode because, it gives Brent Spiner some actual acting chops, so it gave us some good stuff, like a classic TOS. Doomsday Machine was great. Mirror Mirror was, of course, a great episode. But going to Doomsday Machine, damn, I mean, you feel for Captain Decker in that episode, you know, um,
Absolutely.
and seeing for the first time like a real torn apart Constitution class ship. You're like, oh my God, this is wow,
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
it had some really great visuals, for the time,
Yeah.
and really wonderful ideas. This ultimate weapon, which of course was, symbolic for was it atomic bomb at the time? It was
Either the atomic or probably hydrogen. Well, Kirk mentions the hydrogen bomb.
okay,
So I'm thinking it was more of a hydrogen, but because that was supposed to be so much more damaging
right,
than an atomic bomb. Yeah, that was like the next fear.
right,
The 50s had, it was the atomic age and atomic bombs, and then the 60s it was the hydrogen bomb. So
right,
and since he mentioned it specifically, I think that's where the analogy lies.
yeah. See, and that's the one thing that I think Star Trek does well is it plays up the fear in a realistic way where it's not hyperbolic. It really does show,
Right.
oh my God, this could happen. It's not preachy, and I think that's one thing that modern Star Trek, when it's done right, it really does, work on all cylinders. It really does kind of reflect us. And I think this season of Discovery, it's given us a little bit more hope. And I don't know if you've seen Discovery with Captain Pike.
I
He was go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your sentence.
He was the best thing about season two. Captain Pike in that season. Because he was actually hopeful. And Star Trek Picard, I didn't feel that hope. I actually felt like stop taking my heart medication because I was like, oh man, it's pretty dark. But when Star Trek does show that glimmer of hope, it really does shine, like classic Trek does. What are your thoughts?
Well, having not seen any of the recent Trek shows,
Mm,
I don't feel like paying to watch
right,
Star Trek shows, and going off some of the reviews when Discovery started, it just and the way it looked, and them saying that it was set during the prime timeline, but all of the aesthetic changes that went on, that you could see in the photographs that they would post online, and things
right.
like that. I was like, I just didn't want any part of it.
It's a
Really, I'm
turn.
just like, yeah, it's to me it was like, it was it was setting aside the thing that launched all of this.
Right.
You know, um, at the very least saying, about the original series, yes, those stories happened, but none of it looked the way
Not like
you've
you remember it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
none of it really looked that way. It looked this way,
Yeah.
you know. So that
See, and that's
that bothers me a lot.
yeah. So Frank Parker says, hey Frank, how are we doing, man?
How you doing, Frank? It's nice to have
So
you in here with us.
absolutely. So that was one of the things when Discovery came out, and we saw the you know personally my favorite bridge, um, of the Enterprise, classic 1701, and I'm including the 1701A, in that as well, is Captain Pike's, the kind of gray, the blue, the blue rails.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I was kind of, I was not distraught, but I was kind of like, well, that to me screams Buck Rogers, you know, that classic 1950s, you
Yeah.
know, aesthetic. And that was part of the problem that I had with Discovery season one. You know, now there is of course things that I liked about Discovery season one. There are things I didn't like. The look of the Klingons, I still don't like those look of season
That
one.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
It was bonkers, man,
Yeah.
bonkers.
If
But
I were still going to sites with chat rooms about it, I really would have had a lot to say. But I don't do that anymore, and so I kept my cuss words to myself.
your anxiety level's a lot lower having not done that. I can tell you because mine was
Yes. Yeah.
skyrocketing. I can tell you,
Yeah.
it's you know they did course correct in season two by giving them hair, so they look a lot more like the you know DS9 next gen looking Klingons.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, it does kind of go counter what happened with season four of Enterprise. You know, with them fixing, you know
Yeah.
the you know making them look like TOS Klingons because then you're like, well, how does that fit? And for me, I'm big on continuity. Like, how does this fit? Um, Now, there are people who would say, well, just enjoy the story. And it's
Right.
like, if you have to tell a story where I have to turn my brain off, then you failed as a storyteller. You know, to me, it's like, look, especially in a franchise where you've got 50 plus years of continuity, you either accept the job knowing, okay, I've got to include all of this, or you
Right.
don't take it. Because, you
Yeah.
know, there are going to be those people like us who are going to sit there and nitpick everything. And, you know, imagine being a kid who looks at all this stuff going, man, there's so much history here. I want to delve into this world instead of who cares?
Yeah.
It's the next pew pew pew. You know that.
Yeah.
You know
Uh,
what?
that's one of my big points as well. Is is the continuity.
You know,
Because especially like with the series, the 24th century series, it's like they were set further in the future, and things of course looked a lot different, but they you know but they honored where they came from.
yes, yes,
They the episode Relics from the Next Generation,
yeah.
the set of they rebuilt that little section of the Enterprise bridge. It didn't look any different than the one for from the original series. They completely ignored the idea that it by today's standards the bridge on the original series kind of looks a little hokey. Okay, they're like, so what? That's how it looked. That's what we're doing.
Right.
And they did that for especially DS9, the Trials and Tribulations
Oh man.
episode
Yes.
was fabulous. It was
Yeah.
just incredible. And to a lesser extent, the Voyager episode where they had it set on board the Excelsior with Sulu, but they recreated it the way it was supposed to look. And then
Well,
with Star Trek Enterprise in the Mirror Universe, they rebuilt the entire bridge, and with no concern of this, it looks pretty simple and maybe a little low budget, but you know what? That's what it looked like on the show. So that's what we're doing. And they made it work.
well, they even
And
call back. They even call back to it, saying, "Oh, this kind of looks, looks a little odd." But I mean,
yeah,
when you make callbacks to that, going, "Well, yeah," but when you see the ship in action kicking ass, you're like, "Oh man, this is this is cool."
exactly.
You
And
know,
it all worked for all those years. Those
yeah,
shows respected what the original series was, and even what it looked like. And then with these newer shows, they seem to be going, no,
yeah,
it just no, it really didn't. It really didn't look like that. And that, as a longtime fan, really turns me off.
yeah,
It's kind of like just saying that stuff. That look doesn't matter, and I'm like, well, yeah, it does.
yeah,
It does look, because, like you said, continuity.
yeah,
I'm a big stickler for it as well. It's like, people do say just sit back and enjoy the story, and I'm saying yeah, but if they're ignoring what came before, I can't enjoy this story because
Right.
they're just disregarding things, and
Well,
I have a
it,
hard time with that.
it would be different if Discovery had been like there's I'm of two frames of mind. First off, Steve Atwell says good afternoon. He just joined us in chat. Good afternoon,
Hi,
Steve.
Steve.
It would be different if you could see the beginnings of the TOS. Like in season 2, you do see the bridge of the Enterprise. Um, and it's, to me, I love it because it feels like an updated version of the Cage. And to me, I feel like it's a good compromise for. I feel like if you saw it, you would be like, okay, this is a good compromise. It's still not the basic level of NerdTube just joined us. He says, nice shirt. I assume he's talking to you because my shirt is it's not an
I guess
intricate ball.
I guess he is. Well, yeah, I appreciate that, NerdTube. You can probably find it online somewhere. My wife bought this for me quite some time ago. But it's one of my favorites too. I wear it a lot, so I enjoy it. I always get comments when I wear it too, so I appreciate that.
So Steve Atwell says Discovery was a soft reboot, and the producers realized they made a mistake and tried to correct it in a second season. Hopefully, they'll do more TOS designs for Strange New Worlds. No, and that's exactly like those that when you see the bridge of in Strange New Worlds, when Pike walks on the Enterprise
Yeah,
bridge.
I've seen photos of it.
Yeah, to me, I feel like if that had been like the Discovery Bridge, I feel like the fans would have been like, okay, this is a great compromise. Because to me, I feel like it is for the Enterprise. I feel like it's not as bad. But when you see that Discovery Bridge, it's like this is off-putting. And then you see
Yeah,
the Klingon, and you're like, what is this? I feel like if they had, because now they're spoilers for anyone that doesn't know, they're in the 32nd century,
yeah,
and
they went
yeah.
forward.
I feel like if you had started the show in the 32nd century, this would have been perfectly fine,
Yeah,
and I would have had no problems with the look of the ship or the Klingons. And because I mean you're so far ahead, hey, things change. Um,
exactly.
so I feel like setting it in the past has always been the problem. That was one of my problems with Archer's ship, is you're setting this back, but this looks so much more advanced than Kirk's stuff. That's why when they did it in the Mirror Darkly, and you have the Defiant kicking the shit out of every ship, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
because it
I
had that
actually
respect.
I actually didn't mind the bridge of the NX-01 so much. It's like yeah, it looked a little bit more advanced than Kirk's ship might have.
Right,
But it still had enough of what we would recognize as our own technology to
right,
to balance that a little bit.
right.
So it's not a perfect fit, but I thought it was a pretty good fit.
Well,
Um,
and it also felt like very submarine claustrophobic, where it's like in Kirk's time, they can expand and the basicness of that design could be like they're so overly, their technology is so far advanced they don't need all that stuff around.
right,
Um,
exactly.
so Frank says you have a frog in your throat, V-Man. I am under the weather, a little bit. So I took some Mucinex, took some Airborne. Um, I'm drinking my coffee. I'm going to take, I gargled salt water last night. I am under the weather, but, hell or high water, I was going to interview my friend Craig. So, can't hold me back, man. Because we've been planning this for what, 3 months now, 2 months now?
Yes, three
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was,
since you
I
asked
was,
me. So
I don't care. I don't care if I was interviewing underneath my covers, I was going to,
yeah,
so,
as long as
yeah,
you're not in a hospital bed with then we're good.
there's that. Yeah, there's that. So going past our love of Star Trek, because obviously I think we could make that an entire show in itself. Uh,
Probably.
Steve Atwell says, "Oh no, you caught my cold. I tried to stay offline, but you gotta, you gotta do it." That's about it, Steve. And Frank says they wear a proper uniform in Enterprise. Well, that was something else. It was kind of an astronaut type uniform in Enterprise, as opposed to like the uh, kind of just a long t-shirt in regular Star Trek. But again, you got to look at the time that it was made,
Yeah.
and budget,
Yeah. Well,
because again,
you've got
look at Next Generation jumpsuits, those godforsaken.
yeah.
you know,
I have a real problem with like the one piece suits that people were wearing, on any of the shows where they started out with these like basically jumpsuits,
yeah,
even though the ones on Enterprise, which you've got draped over your chair there, they were a little bit more workmanlike. They
yeah.
seemed to be made of a tougher material. But I just couldn't stand the one piece thing. I'm like, getting out of that would be just,
I
a
can tell.
pain in the butt getting out of it and into it. I'm like, come on, make it, a shirt and, a shirt, or, a shirt and a jacket and pants.
Well, see, this one right here is a jacket, and I can tell you,
Oh,
if they
okay.
had done it this way, this would have been awesome, because this make it pants and then make it the jacket, because this is a jacket Frank got me, and this would have been great. Now I can tell you the uniforms that they used were like the Ghostbuster uniform that I have, that
Yeah.
me and Royce went to the film in yesterday, and those things are a bitch to get on and off,
Hmm.
especially if you're sweating or if you're sitting down. Because if I'm sitting down, like I had to unzip it while I was sitting down in the movie theater, because my fat gut was like popping out, as I'm eating popcorn. So those
Yeah.
things are uncomfortable, unless you're trim, which, of course, I am the height of physical specimen.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, I hear
you know,
you. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. Yeah, I am. Yes, I
we
have
are
a
like
perfect.
we are like two Herculean statues, you and I.
Exactly. Exactly. I had to wear a Ghostbusters jumpsuit for work back when I was 17 years old. I worked for a couple of guys who had managed to get the license for the Ghostbusters fan club, and we had a kiosk at a local mall, and I worked there part time. And since it was a Ghostbusters kiosk, and we were, selling fan club memberships along with a lot of merchandise, I had to wear a Ghostbusters jumpsuit to work every day.
You know how
So
comfortable those things are.
I know how uncomfortable those things are, but at the time I loved wearing it. I loved
Oh, it's great.
walking into that mall in that jumpsuit. It was
It's great.
fantastic.
It's great. So Steve says that's the future. Everyone wearing one piece outfits in the future. Oh, that's true, Steve. And usually but the only problem with Enterprise is they weren't all silver, because every sci-fi show from like the 50s and 60s is they're
That's
one
right.
piece, but they're silver,
Silver.
and usually like a fishbowl over their head. That's a Star Trek I want to see. Make it right.
Yes.
Um, so Frank
Uh,
says, now I can gauge my eyes out. I
yeah.
imagine I imagine
Gouge.
it's the Herculean statue comment that
Yes, exactly.
so okay, we've gone down enough rabbit trails for this show, I feel, and we're already halfway in the show. So you work on CGI for Starship Valiant, The Outer Rim, which, by the way, everybody, The Outer Rim is working on. They have a GoFundMe, which after the show, I'm going to put that in the description. I don't have it now because I wasn't aware that Craig was working on Outer Rim, but he'll send me the link after the show, and I'll put that in the description. Um, what other programs have you done CGI for, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, there were a couple that were false starts where I was asked to contribute, but the fan films never got done. And then, of course, Michael asked me to do Starship Valiant, and I was, at first a little reluctant to do so because the other ones hadn't panned out. But after he sent me a couple of scripts, I was in love with the idea, so so I agreed to do it. And then, of course, there's the Outer Rim as well, which I'm doing preliminary work on right now. Um, I also had done, and I had built a CG model for a web series called Malice, and you can find episodes of that if you look up Malice Down Under here on YouTube. And I built a model of a space station for an episode of that show that was Space 1999 centered. It was kind of like a dream sequence sort of thing, and it was set in the universe of Space 1999. So I built a model for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it looks fantastic in that episode. It somehow it ended up looking better than I built it. At least I think so. Um, but a friend of mine, Phil Cook, he created and directed this web series. And when he asked me to build the model, because he was in a bit of a time crunch, I like jumped at it because I had been watching the Malice web series, and he said, "Do you think you could do this for me?" And I was like, "Of course, yes, of course." I'm like, this thing's going to be seen. It's going to be amazing. So, but that was before Starship Valiant.
Mhm.
And I also worked on an independent film for another friend of mine from college, a short film she had written called Always a Bridesmaid. And they needed, anytime you see anything that's on screen, like on a computer screen, or a smartphone screen or something like that, they needed animations for that. So I provided those, and then they just put them in where they belonged. But Wendy Iben has been a friend of mine for much longer than either of us would probably care to say. We met back in college. So when she asked me to help with her short film, I was more than happy to do so. Not just because she was an old friend, but because it gave me a chance to do something different than the space related stuff that I had been doing. So,
Right.
and that short film is also on YouTube, but it has a very common name, Always a Bridesmaid. There are a number of films with that name, so you have to look a little bit for it. I can get you the link.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you? I was going to ask if you could get us the link. So we'll have that for anyone in the chat or anyone on Rewind. We'll have that in the chat after the show. Feel
Right.
free to click on that. Throw a thumbs up. Maybe a comment. Show support for these films. Because geeks helping geeks. That's the only. A lot of times that's the only thing that keeps us motivated on doing this type of stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, we can get those links for you, and check them out. Leave comments. Let all these people know that support's out there. And that you want to see more of this. As much as I love doing, Starship Valiant and the stuff that I've done with you. We need more original content out there also. So, and that's what these projects are. So.
And that's the thing. Like I've done 4 films, original films, 3 zombie ones, and 1 superhero / vigilante, and they don't get near the traction that the Star Trek ones have done because Star Trek just tends to lend itself to, oh, I'll go click on that, and it's like the other stories are just as good. It's original content. Like go check that out. But sadly, nobody pays attention because it's and that's what's sad is I personally love the original content more than I love the Star Trek because with the original content, I went to a fan film festival, or not. Well, it was a film festival, independent film festival, for Russell Emanuel. He couldn't make it, and he said, "Hey, would you go represent me at this film festival? And I'm up for an award. I don't know if I'll win, but I'm up for it. Would you go?" And I was like, "Absolutely," because anytime it's in Kansas City, I'm more than happy to go represent you. And I've done that on occasion. But just sitting there watching all of these films, which are 10, 15 minutes tops, I love them, and they were all original stuff. And it's like, man, this is the stuff out there that people they never give the time of day to. And not the Star Trek, but it's like anybody can go do Star Trek. Go watch this stuff. It's all good stuff. So yeah, it's give me those links and I'll put those up. And even if we gain one fan for those people, that one fan might be the person that might push that to the next level and be the inspiration to keep going on that. Because that's important. So you met Michael How did you meet Michael, and how did you become involved with Starship Valiant? Because from my perspective, that's what you're mostly known for the Star Trek world.
Yeah. Well, I met Michael before, not long before I left YouTube. I had a bunch of my CGI animations up on my page when I had my previous page on YouTube, and he caught sight of some of the Star Trek stuff that I did, because being a Star Trek fan, there were Star Trek things up there, and he found me that way and contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be involved in Starship Valiant, and so of course I said yes, and it was not long after that that I left YouTube. I say I divorced YouTube because they were getting all wonky with
Oh, yeah.
merging YouTube and Google Plus, and I didn't want to be part of Google Plus, so I left. They also pulled some sneaky tricks that I didn't like, so I just canceled. Yeah, I just canceled my page. I have a new one now. But there's nothing on it yet. I'm working on an animation to upload, but it's going slower than I thought it was. But that's how he found me. I think he was just looking. He was looking for somebody to do the CG work, and he just happened to cross my page. And decided to reach out to me. And after he sent me a couple, like I said, a couple of the scripts and some of the ideas that he had, I was more than happy to come on board with the show, and it turned out amazing. I mean, the first one, Legacy, was I, I'm stumbling over my words here. I was really surprised and proud when I finally saw it. I'm like, wow, my stuff is in this show. It was really kind of spine tingling for me. So I was really happy to be a part of it. And I still am. I love being a part of Starship Valiant and the
It's
work
high
that you
caliber.
guys do.
It's
Excuse me.
high caliber. The thing about Legacy, it's a lot of fan films. They fall into the I'm the best captain in the fleet. I'm this. I'm that. Everybody wants to be me. Everybody knows who I am. Michael didn't take that route. Um, he took a route of I'm a family man. I don't really want this job, but I kind of have it. It's either I take this or this douchebag takes it. And I don't
Right.
really want this douchebag to, I got a daughter. He takes the route of, I mean, we're in the middle of a battle with Sukalon. And, it's a great story because it works on a human level. And, there's no ego in the film. The story is about Bishop, but you get to know Kennedy. You get to know that lady that goes. Eventually, she'll go on to the Ajax.
Right.
You even get to see. You get a sense of familiarity with two people in the battle. And even in the special edition, when Menard finally shows up,
And
you get a sense.
you
What's that?
were spectacular
Oh,
in that. You were absolutely spectacular in that. I remember when the special edition came out and I watched it. I sent a message to Michael immediately after I was watching it, and I'm like, "Who is this guy?" Because he's so good. Not that, I mean, everybody in on Starship Valiant is good. There's no doubt about it. But you came in and it was just so natural the way you and Michael interacted in the sick bay, and I was like, he's really good. And I remember sending a message to him right away, and I think I messaged you too.
yeah, you did.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was very honored. Like, a funny story behind that is I was out, like, as I was waiting for my lines, and for them to call me in, like, they're
yeah,
going through Michael's stuff, and I'm outside the sick bay, which is just plywood and everything. Like, everybody, that doesn't know the sets would be surprised what they look like outside.
Mm-hmm.
The wonderful blue interior and everything. Like, it's just plywood and
Yeah,
2x4s,
2x4s.
yeah. But like, I'm outside pacing back and forth, and I'm literally putting myself into an anxiety attack, because I'm like, I've got to, like, Menard's mindset is, we're under attack, we got to get the fuck out of here. Like, dude, like, it's like, I got, and I didn't know that that's method acting, so but I'm like, I've got to be on point, because this, like, but I was this close to a fucking heart attack, because I, like, my heart was like, oh.
Yeah, yeah,
But
because you've got to walk out there on your cue, and
yeah, because
and
the
the
episode
camera's
that
a
you
little
guys,
thing.
well, the episode that you guys had done on the original Legacy
Yeah,
was so good. I felt the need to bring my A game, because I was like, eventually I'm going to have to act against all of these people, and they brought it. If I don't do the same, I'm doing them a disservice. That's how much that episode was so good.
yeah,
And there's not many films that are like that. There's just not. And I honestly, and those who disagree with me, they're free to their opinion, but I've never seen anything in Star Trek Continues or Star Trek Phase 2 that rivals Legacy. They have hour-long episodes. I just haven't. With character development, with CGI, with the whole package. The characters just work because they feel like real people. They don't feel like stereotypes of characters that we know. They feel like real people that you want to get to know, and the whole package is just there.
yeah,
You guys really have the whole package there.
yeah. William
Real quick.
Wells just jumped on, says, "Hey
Yep.
guys, hi
Yep.
William, good to see
Hey,
you here."
Willie. How we doing, Bill? Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you as always, Bill. So you guys, you've worked on Legacy. What other films for Starship Valiant have you done, and what shots are you most proud of for those other films?
Oh geez, the shots that I'm most proud of. That's Michael asked me the same question when when he interviewed me on the Starship Valiant page here on YouTube, and the 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 shot that I'm most proud of is also one that makes me cringe a little bit, because 90% of it works. It was in the episode Crosses to Bear, and it's the final shot of the Valiant, and I have the camera above the saucer, and it kind of cranes up and around, and then the Valiant goes to warp.
Right.
And the whole shot of craning up and around worked so well, because the episode's kind of somber. So
Right.
I kind of wanted this somber, feeling, of the ship just kind of alone in the stars, as it were. And it all worked up to a certain point, but then I got this grand idea that, hey, we've never followed a ship into warp speed before. They always go racing away from the camera or racing past the camera. Like, why don't we follow the ship into warp? And that part didn't work at all. And I didn't really realize until I saw it in the episode, and I was like, oh. So it's 90% a fantastic shot, and then 10% something that if I could go back and fix, I would go back and fix. My other favorite is another shot from Crosses to Bear. Right after, I don't want to give spoilers to anybody, but it's like right after a tragic thing happens, and the ship is the Valiant is traveling at warp, and it comes out of warp and into the orbit of a planet. And because this tragic thing had happened, I wanted this transitional shot to match that. So the ship is almost entirely in shadow when it's approaching the camera, and as it flies by the camera, we are on the dark side of the ship, and it comes into orbit on the dark side of the planet. I wanted everything to be very dark, to reflect what had happened in the live action scene before. And that worked out spectacularly well. And people actually picked up on it and left comments on YouTube about that scene, about how it worked with it being so dark and so, kind of sad looking. And, so those two are probably the most favorite shots that actually ended up making it into the episodes. So there's a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the episodes that I'm actually going to end up posting on my page at some point. So some of them are a lot of fun too. So
I got to say, whenever Valiant posts on their page, like the beauty shots that you have, I always click on it. Like I love seeing the beauty shots of the ship. Real quick, Jim's Landscape says, hello, everyone. Hello, Jim. Thanks
hello,
for joining.
Jim.
And Steve Atwell says, congrats to Vance for all the Bijou nominations. Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you very much, my friend.
How about that?
It's nice. It's something I never thought. I'm just flattered to be finalists. It's flattering. But that's one of the things not a lot of the people realize is you actually gave me a model of the Constar to use. You fixed it all up. You put the phaser strips on the top of the nacelles and changed the nacelles to blue. Like you gave me, because I wanted you to do to be the CGI guy, but you were very busy with doing Valiant stuff and doing other things that you could. But you were like, hey, go ahead and take the model, and have whoever go ahead. And like that's how nice of a guy that you are. Was to do something like that. Most people are kind of like, no, it's mine, don't touch it. But
yeah, I'm not like that at all.
Well, see, but that's how, like, because I've trust me, like I've worked with a few people where I'm like, hey, can we do this? And they're like, no, it's mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, come on, like, and it's frustrating because you're like, well, I got to make this work, so you got to go to outside source, and and then it creates another 2 or 3 weeks of something where it's someone else's problem. But you've never been like that, and I have to say, first off, thank you for that, because it's such a beautiful model. And that's why, like, every time Michael posts about the Valiant, like, I always look at the shots because they're always so beautiful, and you have a wonderful eye for that. But I think the shot you're talking about on Crosses to Bear, where is it cross? Yeah, across where you're talking about the spinning shot and you go to warp, but you're following it.
Yeah.
I think the fact for me, I see what you're talking about on kind of being your own worst critic. And you're saying that doesn't work for you. But I think for me, I love that shot because nobody else has done that. Nobody else has tried that. I mean, I think I've seen it maybe once, since. But to me, I'm like, I know where they got that from. They got that from Craig. Like, I know where they got it from. Steal from the best.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, it's, dude. I know, because it's like I do the same stuff. Like when I look at George Cayon's films, I'm like, I can utilize that. I can replicate something like that. I do. I mean, and it's only smart because you try to do your version of something. What you can do. And to me, that was saying you inspired someone else to do something similar. And to me, I loved it because you were smart enough to create something completely original, and to me, so that's why to me it works, it's great. We never followed the ship. How cool is that? I mean, that's awesome.
Thank you. I do. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. I do, and a lot of people have remarked how much they do like that shot, and it really is just me, being my own critic, my own worst critic when it comes to those things, because you and I think every artist does this. I'm sure you do when you're with your film work. You'll look at it a little bit later or after production is finished and you've posted it, and you go, oh, you know what? I could have done that differently, or I could have tweaked that a little bit more, and everything would have been great. So it's not like I'm really trying to come down on myself, but it's more like you see it in retrospect and go, it needed something, and I don't even know what it needs. Maybe just a sense of velocity in it that it doesn't seem that I don't think it has, but if other people do, then I'm fine with it. I
Yeah.
really am. So
Brian England here says, "Hi, Craig. Love your work."
thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate that. I enjoyed doing the work, and going back to what you asked me before, you asked about I did helped you out with the Constar stuff, and I also did a few quick effects shots for Stormfront.
Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah,
did.
the Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah. So you helped out with the Melbourne and you worked on that. Yeah, like that's the thing. You've had your hand in like a lot of different pots. And I gotta say, you worked on the Valor for was it Ties That Bind?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I Go ahead.
Not my model though.
No.
I just updated it slightly. That model was actually built by Dennis Russell Bailey, who was a writer on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and also builds some fantastic CG models. And that that model for the Valor was originally supposed to be like a pre-Constitution class ship, which he had named the Phoenix. And luckily, he and I, are friends on Facebook. And when Michael had, said that the Valiant or the Valor is an older ship, I had that model, and I was like, okay, this will work. But I wanted to get Dennis's permission first, which he gave quite readily. So I updated it, changed a couple of things, and we named it a Bailey class ship in his honor. So, but it's a nice model. It really is. It's got some great detail on it.
I have to say that to me, um, and again, like I think as much as I like Crosses to Bear and as much as I like Animals, because I think those are two great films. But going to Legacy where you build up the characters, and then you go to Ties That Bind. The tension in Ties That Bind, where we don't even spend any time with the Valiant crew until like the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael really set up the it's like tension and tension and tension. I mean, because when that warp nacelle gets blown up and you're just like, oh my, what? And then the escape pods, and then and you're like, oh, what? Again, it's like we haven't seen something that fucked up since like the Dominion War, where the Dominion's like, no, the hell with you guys, and it's just like, I mean, my God, and it's just like your heart goes out to Crystal, who did a wonderful job in acting, to Rick Viper, who did a wonderful job acting, to everybody in that scene, who was on the bridge there, and your visuals for selling that ship and what's going on, and then the makeup job by Nate Bright.
Oh wow.
I mean, you talk about next level. I mean, my God, that right there, I would put up again against anything continues or phase two. I mean, you watch that and say, show me anywhere where it's better. And I don't, the tension is never there. To me, this is Star Trek at its best. And I put it up against any of my shit because it's like, hey, I may have more, but damn it, this is Star Trek. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I could not believe how when I watched it, because a lot of stuff went on behind the scenes there. I had a hand in the writing of that as well. In fact, that we had some grand plans before the guidelines came out. We had some really grand plans for the Ties That Bind.
Right.
Plans which I still want to bring to fruition. I have this idea that I pitched to Mike, and he gave me the go ahead, but I haven't really started on it yet. Of writing it as a novel and making it available online somehow, because what we were coming up with was just it was some of the most powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And that cold open that you see, for the ties that bind, that happen, the battle with the Valor and those Sukielon ships. What you say about building up the tension and stuff like that, it came across so beautifully.
Yeah.
To what it was just what we had set down on paper, but elevated because of everybody's work on that. Everybody on screen is so good. And at the time, it's like I knew that this was going to be something special, so I really stretched myself with the CG effects. I pushed myself and did so much R&D trying to make things work, and some stuff works better than others, but I really wanted those effects to look, like you said, like powerful. And as the Valiant or the Valor is just getting pummeled.
Wasted. Yeah.
Because that's what Michael wanted. He's like, he wanted Valor just getting hammered. And I was like, okay, you want hammered, you're gonna get it. Yeah, you're gonna get a ship that has nothing left after, when it's all said and done. And then, with the escape pod scene, having to figure out all the logistics of that, because we had never seen that, in what looks like like a pre-Constitution class ship. They never even mention life pods, or lifeboats or anything like that. So I had to try and figure out where they went and how that whole scene was going to work. So it was quite a challenge, but it turned out so amazing. And I really appreciate what you say about that it'll stand up to any of the more professional Star Trek fan films.
Yeah.
That really means a lot, and I'm sure that would mean a lot to Michael as well. Because I think that stuff we were kind of firing on all cylinders, and it's too bad that we even if we do finish the ties that bind, as a fan film, it won't be the same as we originally intended, and that's really too bad, because we had good stuff in there, and I had good stuff for you in there.
See, now you're making me envious. Like
Yeah.
in my opinion, and I could be wrong. I think because I have a 45-minute or 47-minute film, and CBS hasn't touched me, and I think I have a 42-minute film. Like, again, and I have several of these. Like, CBS doesn't care because we're not on the level of Discovery. And I
Right.
have, Kirk, I have Spock, I have McCoy, I have Beverly Crusher, I have Wesley Crusher. Like, again, they don't care. I think at this point, I think we've gone well past the guideline stage. I think we could do the ties that bind in the original format, and I don't think they'd care. Again, that's just my opinion. Um, just because, I mean, at this point, like, and again, I've said plenty of times, Constar is a series, even though each film has, you know, uh, its own individual film. Um, but I mean, the title of it says, Constar Chronicles or Constar Completed or Constar Continues, whatever. Much like Michael does with, Ties That Bind or, whatever the case may be. Like, it's very similar to how we do our credits. But I honestly feel like we could, legally, get away with it because I don't feel like they feel threatened by what we do anymore. I feel like at the time it was just more like, okay, let's do this to cover our butt. But I mean, Michael just doesn't raise the type of money that they're looking for. And we could do everything, um, realistically on a decent enough budget where they're not going to feel threatened. Again, that's my opinion, and based on what I've seen, and the only one that they've ever really come after post guidelines is Sam Cockings, and that was hey, let's change this, and we'd rather you not do this, but outside that, you're good, and everything was fine, and that's in what 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
of guidelines. So I mean, in that,
Well,
I mean,
actually, the guidelines came out right before J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek film came out in theaters. So that's 12 years ago now. 2009, 2019, 20. Yeah, it's 12 years. The guidelines have been hanging around. I know it doesn't seem like it. That's a long time.
yeah,
And maybe you're right that they really don't. They're not paying that much attention because I think at the time there wasn't much else out there in terms of Star Trek except the fan films and what J.J. Abrams was bringing to the table, and they wanted to protect. They wanted to protect that. I think, but now that they've got all this other content, it may not mean as much to them.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm brave enough to, you know, test it and see, but if Michael gave the go ahead on the ties that bind as we'd written it, I'd in a heartbeat, I'd be there working on it because it was, what he was doing, what his ideas entailed, and what would have, what we would see and hear and feel was just astounding. It really was. And we were both just so jazzed about working on, putting it together. We really, really were. And maybe we will. I'm happy to run it across, run it past him and say, do you want to take a chance at really doing it?
well,
If,
I know. Well, I know. Frank here says 2015. But
okay.
so I think, yeah, because it would have been about 2 years after I joined Fan Films, and I joined. Okay, he says the guidelines were released on June 23rd, 2016. Okay, so yeah, it would have been a few years after I joined. So okay, so it's been, see, 20.
Oh,
Okay,
it's
so it's
been
been
less
about
than,
5 years now. Okay,
5 or 6 years.
so
5 years.
but yeah, I based on what we've talked about, and again, my conversations with Michael hasn't been as in depth as yours. Um, but based on what him and I've talked about, um, I got very excited, and I know him and I are very similar in tone of how we tell our stories, and how we think of characters, and he's one of the inspirations for me doing this. He's such a well-crafted storyteller, and how he thinks of things, and he's such a calm and mellow person. I couldn't see anything bad happening, because he's never had anything but good intentions. Um, but yeah, I don't, I realistically, and I speak, like I said, I have several films that are well over, and I've had people ask me, well, what are you going to do if CBS comes after you? And I'm like, dude, I don't think CBS cares. I mean, there's no way they would ever, they'd look at my production and they would go, no one's ever going to compare me to Discovery or Star Trek Picard. And same
Right.
thing with like Avalon Universe, which I think they have probably the same type of quality as like a Star Trek Continues or Star Trek Phase Two, even though their budget is considerably lower, and they've never gotten approached. Um, so I would say, um, with a 98%, I think if Michael ever gave the go ahead, I think we'd be pretty safe. Um, that's just my thoughts. Um, I would love to finish that film. Even if we started from, not the opening, but just started from, okay, you guys have already seen that, so let's start from here going forward,
Right.
just to give ourselves that extra few minutes of, well, they've already seen that, so let's go from here forward. But I think we'd be pretty safe because you have films that are pushing the limit. And again, I think their biggest concern was, we know what we want to do with Paramount Plus. We know what we want to do with all these different shows, and we don't want anyone mistaking.
Right.
I don't think Michael falls under that.
No.
Uh, but
Uh,
but anyway,
in
forget
fact,
my
I
soapbox.
don't know if I seriously doubt that anyone from Paramount's legal department would be watching this. Hello, if you are.
If you
But
are, man, I've got some good fans.
yeah. But one of the appeals that I would like to make at this point to Paramount, if I could, would be, they seem to be, retroactively changing a lot in terms of what Star Trek looks like at this point. Even, the stuff set in the original, during the time of the original series. So why not give the original series back to us, back to the fans? Let us use that visual aesthetic, because we've been doing it now for how long, and we know how it looks and how it feels and what we're and what we're able to achieve. So give that back to us. Go on with your stuff, and that's fine. But give the original series back to the fans, at least in terms of what it looks like, and the uniforms, and the weapons and the ship designs and things like that, and let us keep that part of Star Trek going, since since they are changing it, at least visually. Let us keep that original aesthetic, and let us keep telling stories that way. That would make me very happy if they decided to do that. I think that'd be very magnanimous of them.
Well, I think their biggest concern, like I said, for being confused, the fans being confused for, is this Discovery or is this Discovery? I think their biggest concern is, are people milking the fans for, hey, give me money for this, and then not paying off the thing.
Yeah.
But that's one thing about Michael is, especially at this point, and same thing for me. If you donate to a GoFundMe for me, you're going to get films. They may not be the best looking films, but you're going to get, X amount of films,
Right.
With Michael. And he's very transparent. Hey, you donate to this is what it's going for. He's very transparent. And the thing about it is we don't have, you don't have to worry about Michael asking for, $50,000 or $100,000. I know for each 15-minute segment, we can ask for $50,000. Michael's
Right.
never going to do that. I don't see that happening.
Right.
But for a few thousand, Michael is a minimalist. He's going to, in fact, he'll take money out of his own pocket. I did the same thing myself. He'll ask for some, but he'll take money out of his own pocket as well. But he's very transparent. And I feel like that's the other part of, that's the other shoe dropping from Paramount, is we don't want people mistaking your product for ours, and we don't want people stealing money from fans. So I think both of those cases don't apply. And that, I feel, is the current state of fan films, because again, nobody's been brought up, so I feel, again, I could be wrong, but I just don't think we're in any danger there. Watch next week. I get a letter from CBS saying, "Shut the fuck up, fat man." But anyway, we're over our hour limit. So with that being said, you guys are on Outer Rim, doing a GoFundMe, and that's Jim Bray's film that he's doing. You guys have a link for the first episode on that one, correct?
Yes. In fact, of course, everything that they've done is here on YouTube. If you look up the Outer Rim, you'll be able to find the stuff they have. They have one full episode, a number of shorts that they've done, some behind the scenes work. There is also a talk about their GoFundMe. Their GoFundMe plan, which I think everybody needs to see, because again, much like Starship Valiant, what Jim has shown me in terms of script, in terms of the universe building that they're trying to do, I'm extremely impressed. And that's why I decided to be a part of it, was because I was so impressed with what they were putting together. And the very original storytelling and the characterizations, I think are, something's sorely needed right now. You can do this if you're a Star Trek fan. You'll still love the stuff that they'll be doing for Outer Rim, but it's also something new and completely outside that universe that gives you a new and that gives you a new perspective on things. And I'm very impressed with what I've seen with from them so far, and I'm happy to be working with them and helping as best as I can, as much as I can. They'll be using traditional models as well as CG, so I'm looking forward to seeing how all of that how that stuff mixes together. So I'll be handling the CG side. They'll be doing the physical modeling, on their own. I've seen a number of the models that Jim has built. They're amazing. I'm, a little trepidatious about trying to copy them in CG because he puts a lot of detail on these models, and I've got to try to match that. So it's another challenge for me, and that's something I really enjoy.
Well, that's the one thing about Jim Brace. He knows exactly what he wants when he wants something. He's very, very focused on it.
He
So it's
is very, yes, he's very easy. He is laser focused on those things. So, there's also some stuff that I hope they post soon that, has a good number of my effects in it. Just framework. Yeah. They're not final effects. They were just enough to, be able to put a story together. They didn't ask me to do anything complete. We just need something to, put in what would otherwise be a blank space. So I put stuff together very quickly, still as best I could. I still wanted it to look nice, but I also wanted it, it needed to be done very quickly. So hopefully they'll be uploading some of that stuff soon. So you'll be able to see how I fit into all of this. So, but I'm enjoying working with them. As much as I am having fun with Michael and Valiant, they're equal parts. So, and I'm looking forward to doing more Valiant stuff soon as well. I'm kind of itching to do it. So, because I did not get to do the effects for Animals because I had computer problems. So that put a lot of extra pressure on Brady Foster, the editor. I had to give him all the models so that he could do the effects for that. And that's another thing. Well, you had mentioned with the Constar. I don't mind if somebody needs a model and I have one and they can use it. I don't mind. I don't mind giving it to them. I really don't, because otherwise they just sit on my system. I'll use them, sure, but if it can help somebody else with their fan film, so that they don't have to pay somebody to build a model, I'm happy to do that.
Well, that's one of the things that is kind of sad is take someone like me who my I have no budget, or I think over the
really, from the name of your company, I never would have guessed that you have no budget.
I think out of the 111 films that have been produced out of this, I think I think maybe all total has been like maybe $4,000 or something, which is that's chump change. It's not really, and again, that's something where it's not only my films, but I extend out to other people. So it's not only because I do believe in giving back to others. And that's your attitude on giving me the Constar model. Has been a big part of why I do what I do with, hey, I've got this uniform. Do you need it? Hey, I'm going to send this to you. Just send it back whenever, and Frank and I have done that quite a few times to those who've needed it for a film, because it's a generosity of spirit, as long as we know the person, we know they're not just going to steal our shit,
Right.
But it's one of those things where, it's like, if you have it, and others don't, why not? Because it's like, especially today where some people just don't have it, and other people are trying to make money off of Star Trek. It's like you can't be that way,
Right.
and it's so easy to do it, and all they need is that helping hand, and you've always been that way, your generosity of spirit. You're one of the most generous people, and it's Yeah, Frank says even when you pay to have the model built, you can't get it. Yeah, no, that's really fucking sad too. There are some people out there where that applies.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the case. If you pay for, it's like paying McDonald's to get a Big Mac, and then they're like, "Fuck it, here's the box. You're not getting the sandwich."
Yeah,
Be like, "Oh,
exactly. Yeah, there's just, yeah.
But
No,
you working with Michael is like the perfect relationship of he's so generous, you're so generous, then you have the product, and you're like, this is what fan films should be. You know.
and I think I think that that generosity, snowballs, or grows. It's like, because he is an extremely generous person. He gives me so much leeway when it comes to the effects. He gives me a rough concept of what he wants, but he lets me run with it. You know, so that that in turn fuels me to
Yeah.
produce something better. And then with you, when you came, to me about the Constar, I was like, well, sure. I mean, why wouldn't I do this? You're a friend. I like what you're producing. You need something from me here. It's just very simple to me. It's, a friend of mine needs my help, or needs something, that I have, and it's an easy thing to give away. It's, it's a computer, I can send it to you over the internet. I don't lose anything. I still have it. And now you have it too, and you can do whatever you need to.
Well,
And
hearing how Michael, um, you know, whenever he's talked about you, and the respect that he's had for you, and how he comes up with shots, and he's like, I tell him generally what I need, and he comes up with this, and usually I'm happy with it. Like that one sentence framed how I deal with my CGI guys that I talk to. Because up to that point, I really didn't know, like I was in my mind mapping out shots and this, and I don't have that approach. I have that same mentality of, hey, this, I need the constant orbiting a planet. However you want to do it doesn't really matter. It's an Earth type planet, or Saturn, or whatever. However you want to do it. Like I don't care. I give a lot of leeway, because in my mind, like, you guys are an artist, and you guys know what inspiration inspires you. All I need is, hey, make the shot look however. If there's something specific, here's the specific things, but however you guys want, trust you guys to do your job. I've got other things to do. And trusting people is how you get by and make it more appealing to work with. And nothing frustrates me more than someone who's like, let me micromanage this. You just can't be that way, because it's like, dude, if you're not getting paid, why are you micromanaging?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
And I
just
feel
terrible.
the same. Yeah, and I feel the same way. And I love the stuff that you have done with the character of Menard.
Oh,
I
thank
do,
you.
because I mean, I was, like I said earlier, I was so impressed with your performance in Legacy. And you know, if we get to do the ties that bind the way we would all like it to be done, there's some great stuff for you there as well. Because I instantly loved the character of Menard. I did, instantly. And then to see what you've done in your own films with him just blows me away. It really does. And I love the fact that you just go ahead and do it. It's like, it didn't matter, you know, there weren't, you didn't, there weren't budget considerations necessarily. It's, I have this idea, I have this story, I'm going to write it down, I'm going to get some friends together, and we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
And it turns out spectacular, because your friends are good. You are a fantastic actor. I don't know how you get so natural in front of the camera, because even here right now, just you and me talking, you've heard me stumble over my words and use the phrase, way too many times,
I,
because
I
I get nervous in front of this thing. I really do.
I
I just
cheat.
did it again.
I cheat an awful lot. I don't memorize nothing. I have the script off to the side, and then I'm like, "What is this?" Okay, there we go. And then I pull it back
Yes.
again. What is this? Okay, there we go. I'm not natural at all, dude. I don't memorize nothing. So if you ever see me on stage with Michael, there's going to be a lot of, "All right, Mike, we got to cheat on this one, man. I don't memorize nothing." So it might be natural, but it's my lines are very short, you know. So there's a reason why it's a com box episode half the time because I'm reading like right above the camera,
Yeah,
like
right above the
so.
camera. Yes.
So I mean, you know, if ever, you know, it's one thing when you're writing the episode because if there's a long montage, you know, I can make it up on the fly because you know me fucking up a line is like it's like a rewrite, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, it's but I appreciate the words, you know. NerdTube says no one strikes a pose like stoic thought like Menard. You're right. I do kind of tend to do that Michael Keaton in the Batcave like.
Yes.
Yeah, I do get lost in thought a lot, you know. But
And
anyway,
you're good. And you're good at it. And you're good at it. You know, I mean, I've just enjoyed everything that I've seen you in. I think you're a very natural actor. And this is coming from somebody who isn't one. I have a friend of mine who has this is a shameless plug. A friend of mine named Jeff Anoble. He and I have been friends since high school. He has a page here on on YouTube, where he has posted a number of the projects that we were doing back in high school, and I star in some of them, and I am not good. You know, for some reason, this little box intimidates the hell out of me, and it drives me crazy because I want to be natural in front of the camera, but I can't be. You know, I fall apart and just I get all tightened up and I can't think anymore, just like right now. But you just make it, especially like those zombie films that you did, where it's just you in front of a camera, like a handheld camera, and you're doing this stuff, and I'm like, I really wish I could do that. I really wish I could do that.
I'll say a lot of it is just me running through the woods with my man boobs like jiggling up and down. So a lot of it is me out of breath, you know, that's, you know, huffing and puffing. Like that's easy to do, you know, fat guy running through that's not hard. So, you
So
know,
after you really run, run a couple of blocks or run down the street or
yeah,
through the woods.
yeah.
So that's your acting method, is to get
That's it.
yourself out of breath. And
That's it. That's it. You know,
I guess I'll
uh,
have to remember that.
that's it. That's it. It's not hard to be me. Just, you know, it's, you know, oh man. But all right, Craig. So we're now 27 minutes past the hour. I want to say it's a pleasure to have you on. It's been a pleasure working with you and seeing what you've done on so many things. I mean, you've made us look good. You know, my favorite is the ties that bind it, and I mean just the tension. Even though I wasn't in that scene, like I mean, nothing's more awesome than like we're the heroes. We're gonna go stop that. You know, like it's so heartbreaking because you're like that crew that just got killed and slaughtered. Your heart goes out to them, and you were part of a huge part of that. Like I said, the warp nacelle gets blasted off. And you're like, man, these guys, oh, it's terrible. You bring that element. Because I mean, the only thing I could do is hold my Lego starships and throw it on the floor, and that's my CGI, buddy. You are a true master of your craft, man. Especially given the fact that you do it out of the kindness of your heart. You don't charge. You don't milk people when they don't have the money. Like you do it simply for the love. And it makes me love you even more. And I say that with true heart. And I can say that there have been times where, regardless of whether you knew it or not, you've reached out when I've been at a low point, and your word has been an encouragement. So I've got to say, man, even though you may not have known it, You've been a godsend. So just keep being you, man, because you are an awesome individual. So
Thank you very much. And I feel very much the same about you. I mean, you know, having never met in person before, and I've said this to Michael and about Michael as well, how close you get to be with somebody just through shared experience. And I know what you're talking about, reaching out to you when when you seem to be at a low point. And it's, and it doesn't matter that we've never met in person, face to face. We've talked enough for me to know that you are worth caring about and being my friend. We have, we have those shared experiences and those shared likes, but there's, you have a spirit that I appreciate.
no, likewise, my friend. Likewise.
And so, I'll give as much as I possibly can to any friend at any time who might need it. I'd say that to anybody, friend, or, friend, family. If they need my help, or if I think I can help, then I will help. Whether it's talking somebody through a rough time or blowing up a CG starship. It's, to me, it's.
Well, NerdTube says I'm gonna cry, guys. This is a fucking emotional group hug.
Yeah, that's right. It's a group hug. Well, hey, there's a lot out there right now that's trying to tear us apart. So the best thing that we can do is stick together.
That's exactly it.
That's the most important thing we can do is stick together. That's the only way we're going to get through any rough time is by sticking together, and the good times too, because that makes them more fun. So
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Well,
so anytime anytime you need something, all you got to do is reach out, and if I can help, I will. That's the way it is, brother.
Likewise, man. You need me, I'm just a phone call away. And since I work overnight, I'm a phone call away, man. Call me. I don't mind talking. So it's always a pleasure. So with that being said, everybody in the chat, we will get the links to the films that Craig's been a part of, and also the GoFundMe for Outer Rim. Please go donate if you can to the GoFundMe. And if you can't donate, share the link at least. I understand money's hard. But sharing the link takes 2 seconds. So everybody in the chat, give me about 5 or 10 minutes, and we will get we'll get that up for you guys. Those in the rewind, should be up in the group. It'll be up in the description. But give us a few minutes to get that organized, and we'll have that up for you. And Craig, again, I want to say thank you, my friend. Again, much love and respect for you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Absolutely.
Same to you, buddy. Absolutely. This has been a real treat. I've enjoyed this. I have. It's too bad. In a way, it's too bad we couldn't have Michael on with us. In a way, it's a good thing because this would go way longer if it was the three of us talking.
Well, you never know. Like, we might have to do a special one. Like, after I'm done with Pizza Roll Diaries, we might have to do a special, like Craig and Michael. Like, if we can convince them to do Ties That Bind, we might have to. Hey guys, So
I'm willing. I'm ready to run it past him. Yeah, I'm ready to give him your thoughts and mine on this. If we could make that happen, I'd be a happy boy. I really would.
And that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
All right, guys. With that being said, everybody at home, be genuine, be safe, and keep on geeking on, guys.
Yes. Thanks for watching, everybody.